Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Happy Thursday. I hope everyone's enjoying your pre-Friday to your Friday. My name is Hayden, and I have the honor and privilege to be your moderator today. I'm excited to see how today's topics will assist you and your team in taking not just your SharePoint environment, but your business to the next level. A few things to mention before we jump in today. First, you may have noticed when you joined, all mics are muted, but don't worry. If you have any questions or comments during the presentation, we do encourage you to utilize the QA chat feature in your toolbar above, where our team will be able to reply to you in real time. Once the webinar concludes, we will then move into a live Q&A session. And at that time, we will allow users to unmute and ask questions to our team, not just about what we cover today in today's webinar, but any of your 365 environment questions. So go ahead and get those ready as we continue, but we'll cover that in more detail later. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Michael to give you all a brief message. Over to you, Michael.
Hayden. Hey, everyone. Michael Fox with dataBridge. Just a quick welcome and an overview. If you've been here and done this with us before, you know we kind of jump right in. This isn't a lot of salesy or presentation stuff. We've got some good topics for you today. For any first-timers or visitors today, as you probably know, Microsoft rolls out new features every couple of weeks, maybe even a little more often these days, and that's across SharePoint, Team, Stream Planner, Copilot, that Microsoft stack. And so our goal here is to let you know of either features that have just been released or that are coming soon. Many of these are business user specific type controls that you can take and apply. Doesn't take any development. Many of them are just switching on the toggles or letting you know that they're there, that they weren't before. So that's the goal of this SharePoint Concierge. I hope you guys find today's information informative, and please reach out to us if we can be of any assistance. Back to you, Hayden.
Sorry about that. My team's decided it wanted to freeze for a little bit, but I'm back. Hey, everyone. We do have a jam-packed schedule today with a wide range of topics, as you can see on your screen now, including a couple of new features. So to kick us off, Leona Winter will be starting us with a topic about nesting hubs in SharePoint. In this lesson, we will explore the concept of nesting hubs in SharePoint, which is a powerful strategy for organizing complex digital environments. As organizations grow, so does the need for scalable, intuitive site architecture. And so nesting hubs allows you to create a hierarchy of connecting SharePoint hubs, enabling better navigation, governance, and even content discoverability. Ken Lewis will follow that up and go over the brand new Org Explorer app in both Microsoft Teams and SharePoint user profiles. We're very excited to learn about this new Explorer feature. It's a new dynamic tool designed to help you better understand and navigate your organization structure. Whether you're onboarding new team members, collaborating across departments, or simply trying to clarify reporting lines, Org Explorer offers a clear and intuitive view to your workplace connections. Last but certainly not least, Dylan Skinner is going to catch us up to speed with the new knowledge agent in SharePoint. If you love AI and seeing how Microsoft is bringing AI into the environment, this is for you. In this section, we will showcase how Knowledge Agent leverages AI to intelligently surface relevant data or content, connect people to expertise, and streamline knowledge discovery across your digital workplace. It's very exciting. Stay tuned. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on into our first topic, the nesting hubs, taught by Leona Winter. Over to you, Leona.
Awesome. Welcome, everyone. Yep, today I'll be covering the idea of associating or nesting your hub sites with one another. We'll be kind of covering why you might do so, and then also how would you about go doing so. Terms you're going to hear today, for those who haven't been on our webinars often, we're going to talk about hubs. So what are hubs? They're a control that flags a site collection inside of Office 365 to have an additional properties that will be covered in the next terms. Next is search scope. This allows your search whenever you go into the search box at the top of a site, you type in a keyword that dictates where you are searching. So in essence, when you're searching on top of a site, it will search the site. You have the capability of expanding your search, kind of through the daisy chain, which will be about the hub association, all the way up to your organization where you search every piece of content. Navigation inheritance, for those who wish to have a static navigation to be available to kind of subsites, and you want to manage it in one site or location where you don't have to have, hey, 15 little modifications every time you get a new site deployed. That's what a hub navigation will allow you to do. You also get branding inheritance. So through your theme options, those sites that are directly underneath of the hub inherit the navigate or the theme as well as the navigation. Lastly will be the hub visitors. This is an optional control that you can turn on if you so desire, which will create a brand new SharePoint security group called Hub Visitors, in which you can manage that at the central hub. Also, I want to start this off with a little bit of an asterisk here. Microsoft suggests only going about 3 levels deep in your kind of a hub hierarchy. So just please be cognizant of that from a standpoint of allowing for search to function to the fullest. So let's go ahead and jump into the next slide, which will be talking about the idea of what you get with the hub. So again, like I said before, you get the search scope, you get the navigation, you get the branding, and the hub visitors. What you get with the hub association is additionally the scope search. And then also there is an additional option, which is the navigational dynamic links. Now there's a little bit of a star here. This is not always dynamic. It's going to snapshot the kind of the associations, which we'll show you in a moment, at the time of you kind of deploying this. So let's kind of jump into the idea of the kind of dynamic links, which will be kind of 2 types of dynamic links that we'll have. And we'll show you all this here in a moment, which will be the idea of the associated hubs. So that would be the kind of top level. And then associated child hubs will be all the children underneath of that. So whenever you select a associated child hub, whenever you're on a hub site, it will show all the hubs underneath of that. So an example right here, let's say your organization is one that expands the entirety of the planet, in which you have some teams that work in North America, some in Africa and Middle East, some that work in Asia and Pacific, that you might want to have kind of region specific, in which they also have their own HR and IT and legal sites that underneath of it. So it allows you to have that hierarchy to say, hey, if I'm in North America and I'm going to go to the legal department, I'm searching within the realm of North America. I don't need to worry about going into the Middle East or Africa or Asia type of idea. Same thing with any of the other regions. When you go down the hierarchy, you can get to the point of being in those hubs and kind of consuming the content that's specifically there. So it creates kind of a daisy chain control that allows you to kind of find content related to kind of maybe who you are or where you are with inside the organization. So let's go ahead and talk through how you go about deploying these controls. This is all going to be done via the admin center. So you have to have a SharePoint administrator to perform these actions. So let me go ahead and pull up our tenants admin center. So right now I'm pulling up the active sites. And as we can kind of see here, we have a number of different sites and a number of different URLs and a number of different hubs. Whenever you see the word hub site in parentheses around something, that is something that has been registered as a hub. So which means that it can be associated to another hub or sites can be associated to it. So let's say right this second, I want this finance site to also be registered as a hub. I will go ahead and select the little checkbox next to it. I will go up to the hub option up here and I will register it as a hub. When you do so, you have the option of naming it. So I'm going to go ahead and keep it as parentheses 1 or L1 finance. I'm also going to say who can see this as an option to register to. I'm going to do myself to save my team the effort of seeing this right this moment in time. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And now this is registered as a hub site. So let's say I have an accounts payable that is underneath of finance, because I might have different finance teams. So let's go ahead and say that, you know what, accounts payable needs to be associated to a hub. So I'm going to go ahead and say associate with a hub. Now, this option here can be done at the site collection level via the site information panel. So you can register a site to a hub, but you cannot register a hub to another hub. That is done specifically in the admin portal. Just want to give that little bit of clarification. So let's go ahead and say we're going to associate to the finance hub. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And now we can see, let me get rid of this little panel. We can see this associated to finance. Now, finance right now is its own kind of separate hub that isn't associated to the rest of my kind of little intranet that I have built out. So let's say I want the finance to now be associated to that. So the steps you would want to do is go ahead and select this, go up to hub, and go ahead and say edit hub setting or site settings. Once you do this, there will be an extra option at the very bottom of the screen, which is the parent hub association. Again, like I said before, Microsoft says, hey, you should limit this to about 3 levels deep, else you start to kind of potentially have search schema or search scope issues. So I'm going to go ahead and choose our webinar comms, which is my little intranet that I've been working on, and I hit the save button. And so now, let me just go down to one of these sites. Let's say we want to go 3 levels deep. So let's go ahead and talk about the search scope. So if I was to go to this level 3 site, and I was to click on it, and whenever it decides to load up, and I say, hey, you know what? I'm looking for content that's maybe within the realm of IT. Right now, I'm on Freshdesk reporting, so if I was to type in any option here, we can see, hey, we have a little bit of a breadcrumb available to us. So this is the search scope that I was talking about. So this allows us to say, hey, you know what? Maybe what I'm looking for isn't specifically in the Freshdesk reporting area. Maybe it's within cybersecurity. So I can go ahead and click on cybersecurity. It will expand the search up to cybersecurity. And then you can also see, hey, the breadcrumb continues to exist for us, which means now I can go up to IT, I can go to the webinar comms, which is the kind of the intranet route that I have. Or if I wanted to search the entirety of the organization, I can do so. So this allows you to easily kind of say, hey, you know, as end users, I can kind of refine my search down to what I care about. I don't need to pull in all content from the entirety of the organization because that might be overwhelming. There might be documents that kind of meet partial criteria that maybe you have access to, or maybe you shouldn't have access to, and people don't know about that. I go, at least this kind of allows you to kind of refine your search scope to be smaller subsets of data versus, again, like the organization that will search everything that you as an individual have access to, including stuff in OneDrive. So search scope is a very nice feature to have. It also creates that daisy chaining control where it allows your user base to quickly find content within inside of the organization. An additional control as well, which is what I was talking about before. So let me go ahead and go back up to my active sites. And let's go ahead and select, let's say, IT for this site here. So I go to my IT site, and let me go ahead and edit my menu real quick. Let me go ahead and remove these 2 sets of links. So there is an additional control that you have, which is the idea of the associated hubs. So if I were to click on this, we get the kind of the site that is associated to this hub site right this second. So as of right now, cybersecurity is the only hub underneath of this. And so we can see cybersecurity is automatically brought in. If we were to go along to the next option, so we were to go down to associated child hubs, we can see that, hey, you know, within the realm that I'm kind of a sibling of, webinar comms, finance, HR, and IT are brought in. So that goes to the top level. And then this one, the associated hubs are going to be the hubs underneath of the current sites. This brings it in at a one-time import. This is not dynamic. If you were to add another one after I hit this button and add it to the navigation, it will not dynamically re-add it. It is a snapshot. So just please be aware that, hey, you might want to configure your hub site association, or you will have to come back into the navigation and manually make updates to it based off of the needs that you have. So I hope that there is some value for you guys to get from this. Hopefully larger organizations will start using the hub association control to kind of keep all your content underneath the umbrella of either your regions or your departments or your corporation as a whole. So with all that being said, thank you for your time today, guys, and I'll pass it back on to you, Hayden.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leona. Yeah, great use case there, especially with multi-locational organizations. If your organization might not be multi-locational, but perhaps your organization and maybe another organization has merged or even acquired another organization, and you need different corporate structures for your document management, but maybe you have some shared services like the HR, IT, or finance. This would also be a great use case for that. So with that said, let's go ahead and move into our next teaching taught by Ken. He is going to go over the new Org Explorer app in both Microsoft Teams and SharePoint user profiles. Over to you, Ken.
Great, thanks, Hayden. So piggybacking on the topic of search, one of the things that's really important is staying on top of your organizational structure when it comes to your staff. The search tools inside of SharePoint can leverage a database that's built into the SharePoint system itself, which is the SharePoint profiling system. SharePoint profiles work in concert with Intra or Active Directory, depending on how complicated your structure is, and allow you to reflect the staff so you can search for them. You can show them visually through, there's an organizational management tool called the Org Explorer, and we'll take a look at that. And then you also have the ability to add additional metadata. So as most folks on the call know, if you're dealing with either Active Directory or Entra, you have things like who the person's manager is, their job title, and a handful of other fields. The SharePoint side of the equation echoes all of those fields. There's a synchronization process that occurs a couple of times a day. And then there are additional areas that you can fill out. The employee themselves can actually go out and fill out. It's a self-help option. And that allows you to put in things like your skill set, your languages, your educational background, your birthday, and so on. The reason this is immensely powerful, particularly things like your educational background or your skills, is those are all searchable. They get surfaced through the search engine, which we'll take a look at here in just a second. And that means that if I'm looking for somebody with project management background, for example, or a particularly technical skill set, I could search by organization for that. And because it's self-help, as my skills grow as a team member, I can add them. There are also areas to track things like the projects I'm working on, my personal interests and hobbies, and other sort of miscellaneous information that you might find interesting depending on how social your staff is and your culture are. So we're going to take a look at the Org Explorer. The Org Explorer is a standalone application that gets surfaced through multiple interfaces. You can see it in Teams, you can see it in the profile editor itself. We'll take a look at those, and you can also see it in Outlook. They're all slightly different from each other. They have probably about a 5, maybe 10% difference in terms of capabilities, so you might prefer one of the interfaces over the others. But generally speaking, they all fairly do the same thing, which is they show your organization in that traditional org hierarchy that we've all been exposed to multiple times throughout our careers. So I'll show you the Teams interface first, and we'll talk about how you can get the Org Explorer into place. So here's our Organization Explorer, and I can
you
select.
You need to share your screen, Ken.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, let me share out. Thank you for the reminder. All right, there we go. So here we have the Org Explorer, and I can pick any of our staff members. So I can pick Michael, and I can see everybody who reports to Michael. I can then expand the team out, and we can see who reports to who. We can dive into somebody, so I can view their profile, and we can see the details. This is the profile card that you would see in SharePoint if you were to pull up Michael doing a search in the SharePoint search engine. And you can also sort of walk the hierarchy, so I can pick a person like Leona, and it zooms in and it shows, oh, there's Leona, here's who reports to Leona, and here's who Leona reports to. So it's a really nice visual. The only downside is, again, very slight differences here. You've got a very nice search bar, but if I shift gears and I look in Outlook, the search bar is not readily apparent. So again, very tiny structural differences, but this still works in terms of being able to choose Michael and then be able to choose Leona. And you'll see I'm getting the exact same interface over and over again. So again, very, very small differences. The color differences between one running in dark mode and one running in standard mode, that was my choice. I chose to put the UI into that mode just because I prefer Teams to run in dark mode. It's just easier on my eyes, and I live in Teams. So the Org Explorer itself, again, being a standalone application, if you don't have it present in Teams, you can pull it in very easily. The Teams application has a just plethora. I think it's probably over 200 standalone apps that can be snapped into the module interface, and those are all managed through this apps interface that's down here. If you have Explorer already loaded and you haven't pinned it to your command bar over here, you can right click on it and you can pin it. If you want to show it and you don't want it pinned, it'll be under your ellipse here. That's the apps that you have loaded but you haven't pinned to your command bar. To find it, you would just click on apps and then you can do a search. There are a lot of different apps that might respond back to a search for org, so you do have to pay attention a little bit here. We want the Microsoft Corporation application. The others, A, might not be free, B, might work slightly differently, and C, can't really vouch for their security. I'm sure Microsoft does some checking, but this one here, this is published by Microsoft, and so therefore is the one that I personally would recommend that you bring into the console. So once you bring that in, again, if you don't have it snapped here in terms of being pinned, you'd find it under here. You can see my Org Explorer, and then I can access it, and I would be able to see my organizational tools. So the Org Explorer, again, very good tool. You can see your hierarchy, you see who reports to everybody. The information does have to be correct in Entra in order for this to work correctly. If you have a misaligned the manager field, the department field, those often get entered slightly differently. You might see this data, they'll show the staff member, but they might see the data being incorrect. It won't show the hierarchy the way you would expect to show it. So one of the things that a lot of folks have to do is they have to go through and they have to do a cleanup on Entra to align everything so the job titles are correct, the reporting relationships are correct. But once that's in place, then it's fairly easy to keep it going. So this is all, again, part and parcel of the SharePoint interface as well. And so if we shift gears and we look at it through the SharePoint lens, we will see the SharePoint profiles. So the easiest thing to do is to just do a search. And so I'll do a search here. I'll bring up my profile. So we will search for Lewis. And I'll get back a ton of stuff because I work on a lot of things. So I'll switch to the People tab. And there's my profile. So I can then go into my profile simply by clicking the name. Again, we see the profile card exactly as we did with Michael. The difference being that because this is my profile, I can update my profile. So before I do that, I wanted to shift gears and show folks that if you actually search at a different level of your tenant's hierarchy, the People tab may not be readily apparent. And so I want to make sure folks know how to get to that because I've had some questions from my clients. And so here, for example, I'll search for Hayden and I will get, we couldn't find any results. But if I go up to the organization level, now I see the People tab and now I can see Hayden's profile. And again, if I click on it, I get the profile card just like we saw before. So that step of going up a level to the organization is critical because you'll see the filters that we get here, the verticals that are on by default, you get a lot more of them if you go up a level. So click on that breadcrumb trail, click on organization, and you'll be able to then see the People tab. So here, if I click on update my profile, I'll be taken into the modern interface for profile updating. There is a classic interface. It does work a little bit differently. It has a little more power associated with it, but the modern interface is so readily available and so easy to use that I don't know that most folks will need to go to the classic interface, but we'll take a look at it in just a second. So it is a tabbed interface. There are a couple of different screens. There are fields that will be set by your organization. You may not be able to edit them. Things like your email address and your reporting relationships may be locked by your administrator, but there is the About tab, and I'll start with it because it's the richest area where you have your biography, you have your skills, there's a little bit that's like your sort of subject matter expertise, if you will. You can also ask me about, right? That's in concert with your skills. You've got your interests and hobbies, projects you're working on, your educational background, and then your birthday. And again, all of this gets surfaced so that you can search. So the power of it really grows as more and more staff members enter this information into the system. To enter something into skills, for example, you simply click in the box. There is an enter field that's down here. Here you would just click add a topic, but here you just click on the white space and then you can enter something. So I can put in change management and hit enter, and now I've got change management logged. If you make a mistake, click X, take it out, retype it, and you're good to go. So it's super easy to add a skill, to add interests, to add your educational background. You also have information here from a contact perspective. If you have additional phone numbers that you're going to be reached at, like your mobile phone versus your desk phone. If you have things that are related to specifically here, like where you're working, you can fill those out. Again, these may be locked by your administrative group, but if they're open, right, you can absolutely clarify all of that. And then again, the general, which is where you have the name that gets displayed for you and your picture here that you can edit. we'll save these changes, and then I'll come back in and we'll look at the classic interface. So if you look at the classic interface, you can get to it through the information bubbles. The information bubble will say you can see the skills, right? And you'll click on SharePoint. This will take you into the classic interface. This is where you can do things like change who can look at your information. So you have here who can see this, and you've got different categories of who can see this. And so you can make changes to that. Again, these may be locked. It depends on your administrative rules, but you can change it to say, I want to have it logged, but I only want to be able to look at it at this point in time. You've got your other information that's in here. The skill set information is a little bit different than this one, because when you go into the skill set information, the skills here, so if I type, it pops up a drop down to start to show you information that's already in your system. That information is coming from different areas, and so then you can look to see if there's something there that would fit for the skill that you're looking for. All right. So the last piece then has to do with showing how the search works. So let me show you that. So we'll go back up to the bridge. So I have a series of skills logged, so I can look for one of my skills. And you'll see it comes back and it shows here highlighted, right? That Ken has that skill set logged. If there are other staff that had that skill set available, you would see those as well. And so that's the power really of keeping these profiles up to date, is that people who are looking to staff a project, for example, they have the ability now to easily go in and look for folks that either speak a language that they need, have a technical skill that they need, or have some other skill that's necessary on the project or work effort. And so with that, I will hand things back to Hayden.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ken. As I'm sure you're all aware by now, everyone interacts with data differently or looks for data in different places. And so having this new feature available in different spots, allowing people to interact with it in different ways, is kind of the best use case here, especially since it all points to one source, like Ken was saying. All right. Thank you so much. All right. Last but certainly not least, here we go. Dylan is going to catch us up to speed on the brand new knowledge agent in SharePoint. Over to you, Dylan.
Everyone, I'll go ahead and switch over the screen here. So in today's presentation, we'll learn about this new knowledge agent feature, which will be available in SharePoint. And for those that have that Copilot license, this feature is currently in preview, but it can be turned on, and you will have that available now in the preview state, but eventually be available for everyone. And basically what it can do is it's like an assistant that's going to aggregate all kinds of different features, capabilities, both new and existing, and make it easy to implement those. So that's to help keep your content fresh, accurate, well organized, and potentially optimizing it for things like search and Copilot agents if you plan to use those in the future or are using them. And I think really there's some standout features of this, which I want to get into. And I've listed some of them here in the slide, and I'll of course show them on the screen. We'll walk through those. But the overview is just going to be, has this improved the site feature, so you can run it just to check if you have any broken links, or if you have inactive pages that you don't want to show up in the search results, to help you create a page, whether that's a news post or just a normal page. And then the one that I found the most interesting being the organize this library. To help you do things like create rules and views, as well as the new feature, a new feature that's available, which some of you may or may not have seen, which is the autofill, so that it can auto tag documents and things of that, and actually help you set all that stuff up, either give you ideas or do it for you or whatever it may be. So, while it's in preview, these are some of those standout features. Of course, there may be more to come. I found that some of these are pretty interesting, and I'll bring on the screen and walk through some of these. And basically how the knowledge agent appears once you have it enabled. And I have the screenshot there, but I'll show it on the screen here as well. It's a floating button. So the knowledge agent, for those that would have it, this would potentially be for those with a Copilot license. So once it's enabled, you would actually see a floating button anywhere where it could potentially be used, like on a page or in a document library. And when you click that button, you'll see some of the things that you could do. Now, of course, this is going to be based on your level of access, what you're allowed to do. It's not going to give you access to do something that you couldn't already do yourself. It's just going to aggregate these and make it easy to implement stuff that you could have already done, basically. But what I'll go ahead and show is this improve the site feature, and I'll do the create a page feature. I think these are two standout ones of the knowledge agent for pages or sites. So I'll do the improve this site. And what this does is it essentially does a scan if you have broken links, content gaps, it's just or inactive pages. And for me, it found some pages on this site that have not been used in a really long time. They haven't been viewed or edited at all, maybe in a year or so. So it just has these pages listed here, and I could potentially retire them. And basically what it's saying, and I'll try to zoom it in, it's a little easier to say or to see, is that you could deprioritize these pages since they're inactive, so that in your search results, Copilot and agents won't try to return these as the top result, because there's no point to do that. So I could, potentially just go into one of these and retire the page. Of course, it can be undone and so on. But I just thought that's pretty interesting. So the idea is you can go through a site, see if you have any broken links or whatever else. If you have any pages that realistically don't need to come back, maybe it was like a copy or like a backup of a page or news post or something, and you just want to deprioritize it, essentially retire it or sunset it. So that's I think that's pretty interesting, just to bring that into the agent, and super easy to use. And some of these I won't go too in depth, but I just want to show them. And I'll show the other one here as well, the create a page. So if I actually hit the create a page there, I actually did run a test. I found it pretty interesting. I just asked it to create a news post on the knowledge agent, which I'll show here. But basically the options are, if you already know, like if there's an out of the box template you wanted to start with for a page or a news post, like if you specifically wanted to create a newsletter, you could go ahead and select a particular out of the box template and then provide what the post is going to be about. Or you could just start directly from the input box and just say what it's about. So what I did is I just, I typed out, create a news post about the new knowledge agent feature that for Copilot that's in preview. And it took about a minute, and it actually made I would say a pretty robust page for me. And so this took about a minute. I won't do it in an example right now, but just to show, it put together and actually did pull in real information about the knowledge agent. It created different sections, pulled in some images. So I didn't choose a particular template. It just created a new news post from scratch, essentially. And I even found when I went through here, it had some information about the licensing and about actually how to enable it for your tenant using that command to enable it for the whole tenant. So that was interesting. It did pull in, it put quite a bit of effort to, create a news post to get me started, from a very simple prompt. And then I could always go back, it's in draft now. I could make my changes, or I could, come in and just use the features here if I wanted to, potentially have it do additional sections, generate, with the AI additional sections for me, or change existing areas that it has. So, I thought that was pretty interesting. Just, at least for me, I would say it's kind of maybe an inspiration or a starting point just to get the ball rolling. That's kind of a nice to have just directly in this little floating button here. And, to get a news poster page set up or potentially retire pages. But I'll go ahead and switch over and show. I just don't want to spend too much time on any one of those particular features, but I'll go ahead and switch over. That was on more about the site and creating content, like pages and news posts. But on the actual document libraries, I found this one maybe as the most interesting one for the knowledge agent. So when I'm actually on a document library, I also see the knowledge agent button. And it's, always going to be the little SharePoint icon that's inside of the button once you have it. And when I click it inside of a document library, I see I have different choices here. So it'll actually have the option to organize this library. So actually set up metadata for me. or create rules or help me create a new view. And I'll just start with some of the other ones, the quicker ones real quick, and then I'll end on the organize this library. But basically the create a new view, most of you might be familiar with views, but if you're not, just to show, it gives you some suggestions on views that might be useful based on the content and the metadata that's there. And so it could give you some suggestions here, or you could just enter, I could say, create a view grouped month field or something, or whatever I may want to put there. That's very specific. I probably could have even been more general if I wanted to say group by month. But and then the idea is now you can see it gives me a preview of that view grouped by month, and I could add additional sorting, filtering, whatever I would want to do with a view. It would just help me set that up, preview it, and then if I could save the changes if I wanted. And you can see any of the actions here that so just through natural language prompts here, like the little conversation, like ChatGPT style, I could just enter what I want to change on the view. It'll add an action and do that. If I don't like it, I could remove it and then just ask for another one. I could also add a sort by, the name column or something like that, or filter where the document type is only show presentations or something of that nature. But I'll go ahead and cancel out of that just to show some of these other ones as well. So the knowledge agent, just real quick, I'll show the setup rules. So the rules is also an existing feature, but it's got some new stuff in it. That might be mainly used for creating alerts, but it can do other stuff too, which it'll show here as suggestions, like set a status field, send a notification, copy a file or move a file to another location. So, I could say, I could just ask it when the file's expired, move it to the expired folder or something like that, and so I could just even select one of these just to show real quick. So send me a notification whenever a new file is added. And you can see it pulls up the rule. It sets up the rule for me. So when a new file is added, send me an email. And I could just say create if I wanted to create it. So that's nice. And I could set up additional rules here as well, or, just, ask for what I want. If I don't like it, I could remove it or even edit it myself. And then when I'm done, I could, save my changes. And there's all kinds of little features here you can see of, just being able to work on the library. I'll just go ahead and cancel out of that one as well. And I'll show the last one, which I found the most interesting, which is to organize this library. So when I click to organize this library, this here is actually, it could still do a lot of that other stuff just from this chat. What I found interesting was potentially to give you suggestions and even help you set up metadata that could even be auto-filled. So there's this newer feature, the document processing autofill feature, and where it'll actually, based on what the document is, you could set up a column, whether it's an existing column you have, so it could be a site column from a content type or just a local column, and you could autofill values based on what's in the document. So I've already set up a couple of them here, like document type or the month. Actually, it, based on the name, or if the month is in the document, it'll tag it to what month my webinar doc was for. So this library is basically all my webinar presentation notes. And so it actually, if it is mentioned, it'll auto tag it for me, which is interesting. That's nice. So I could just to show real quick, I could say maybe this, I don't know, I think I should have an additional kind of categorization of documents to filter on or something. I could say, suggest me a couple columns, or I could choose the classified documents. So it'll specifically give me more of like a choice type column that's like a category. I could select that, for instance. And you can see the default prompt here, which I could change. It's to create a column that categorizes each file by its document type, no more than 5 categories. And if no category applies, set the value unknown. So I could even change this if I wanted. Now I already created a document type column, but we'll just see what it suggests. But so you can potentially get ideas for metadata. And I already set up a document type, so I just did the document type one, and I didn't change the prompt. I could have said, let's create like a document category column or something like that, but I didn't change the prompt. So it's essentially the same idea. I'm just walking through what I already did with my document type column. I could say maybe remove and for a new type of column there. And also what I could do just to show. Well, if I want to say, I don't even know what metadata I want on this library. I just want it to be search better, and maybe if I have a Copilot agent with a new Copilot agent, it's actually going to be easier. It's going to look to metadata of documents and actually be able to find content that's more relevant based on the metadata. So not just on the content that's within the document, but whatever you tag the document as. So I could say, I want to set up metadata. Maybe I don't know what I want to do yet. So I could say, right now it's suggesting 3 columns. I could say, maybe I'll say, instead of 3, let's just suggest me 2 columns. And we'll see what it recommends there. And you can see I've already have a couple that it's created for me. But so some potential options, it's giving like some kind of maybe summary, summary of the purpose, distinct document characteristics. So it's just basically, giving some suggestions, and I could save those and see if I like them, or I could edit them and potentially change those. And what I want to show as well, when it creates these columns, so I've got a couple already created. Let me go into one of them and actually show you what it's setting up with this autofill. So basically on any of your columns, the new feature, this autofill feature, basically what it's doing, it's creating a column, it's turning on this autofill, and it's setting up a prompt for you. And you could, of course, just come into one of these columns. Like if you wanted to just run this on a test library or whatever you have, a personal library, team library, you could try setting one of these up and see if you like the prompt it's set up. And maybe, you could even think about implementing that on some existing, column that you have. And it can work on quite a bit of different columns, URLs, manage metadata, choice columns, text fields. So a good amount of columns, it can try to auto tag those for you. And if I show you, I think I turned it off for my month column, because basically, actually first went into the knowledge agent, went to organize this library and asked it, create a month column. Like the month value is usually in the name of the document. And so this is what I did at first. And what I actually did is first it created just a column in the library for me. And what I did is, well, I already have an existing site column for it. So what I did is when I generated one of these, I took the prompt from the column that it created for me and added it to my existing site column, as an idea. So you can see it set that up. You can see it basically takes the top 20 documents for me. I can go ahead and see in the preview. So it's not created yet. This is what it's recommending and what it's pulling back based on the prompt it generated for me. And I can, of course, edit it if I want it. It includes the year. If the year's in there, I could say don't include the year if I wanted to change it. But if I like it, I could save the changes. And, so what I had done previously is I had created this and then went into that month column, took the prompt. So let me just cancel out just to come back here, because basically it's taken a sec to create that. Want to take up too much time here. So we can see it created it there. But if I come back to my site column that I already had, you can see it. What I did is I actually went in, turned on this autofill feature to my existing site column and added in a prompt. And you could see what you can actually do with this is I could change the prompt and I could test it on a document and it'll show you the results of that. So, this new feature might be nice, but you may not really know, well, what do I set the prompt as? And so the knowledge agent can be something that helps you set those up or give you ideas. So it could literally create them for you, or you could just use that as inspiration that you would then go implement on maybe something that's a little more published already, where you already have site columns. You could think about if you wanted to use something like the autofill by first testing it on something else, and then maybe go and implement that on something that already exists. But I think it could be interesting, especially for content maybe like just if you have, these kind of policies or knowledge bases, things like that, where people go to just kind of consume content. Maybe you want to have something like agent or make search really work well for that particular site for people just to find a certain document or policy or whatever it may be. Something like the knowledge agent can really help for that. Or even just for team documents, maybe you store your meeting notes in a library from a Teams channel you have in SharePoint or something. You could then go try to use the knowledge agent to start to tag all those existing meeting notes that you have. Maybe find the presenter, or if it contains a signature, whatever it may be that's in there, you could use this to help you set up some of those features. So I think it's pretty interesting what it's already aggregating into the knowledge agent, and I'm sure they're going to add more stuff into here as well. And just to show for those that do have Copilot, potentially want to try some of this stuff out. Basically, the best way to do it at the moment, in the future, I'm sure it'll be different, but they have documentation for how you enable it. But it's basically, if you use the SPO module, SharePoint Online module, and PowerShell, there's a simple one to enable it for all sites, the set SPO tenant. And you just set this attribute for the tenant, the knowledge agent scope, and then you could say all sites, or only do certain sites, or all sites excluding a handful. So, and then whoever has Copilot would be able to potentially use it if they have permissions on that site to do whatever a knowledge agent can do. So that's where it is right now if you want to enable it. But of course, in the future, I'm sure through the admin console, you'll be able to control those features, turning them off and on as well. But with that in mind, I'll go ahead and hand it back over, and yeah, that'll conclude my presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dylan. Yeah, it's not abnormal when meeting with clients that the first question being, what is metadata, right? And then the second logical question being, well, what metadata makes sense for me, right? And so using this knowledge AI assistant with you, maybe to refresh some ideas if you already have a library, or maybe metadata is new to you, and giving out some suggestions and seeing how it works could go a long way. Especially even maybe after a migration, maybe you guys were using some metadata or hadn't yet used some metadata, and now would be the perfect time to start. So thank you again, Dylan, and thank you to all the other presenters for today's presentation. You guys did fantastic. That does conclude the learning portion of today's webinar. I hope we've been able to spark some new interest for functionality for you and your team that you guys can explore. Please be on the lookout in your email for our next webinar. We look forward to learning with you again. Before we segue into our live Q&A section of this webinar, I do want to remind everyone that all of the webinar notes, the slides, the recordings, all of that can be found on our learning portal for easy access for everything discussed today for our SharePoint support clients. If for some reason you don't have access or would like to gain access to this learning portal, please reach out to us after the webinar. We'd be happy to help. Our learning portal is a place where you and your team can get all the materials, not just from today's webinar, but any future webinar recordings and materials as well. All right. With that said, let's go ahead and segue into our open live QA forum. If you don't plan on sticking around for that, I just want to say thanks again for learning with us today. On screen, we are showing instructions on how to raise your hand to ask questions to one of our presenters. Your mic will be unmuted and questions will be taken in order of hand raised. Also, if you're not comfortable undoing your mic and talking out loud during a webinar, feel free to continue to use that QA chat. I saw one come in, and then I'll read it out and we can discuss it further there. All right, let's see here. So it looks like, okay, no questions yet. So the queue is open. Give a couple more minutes. Friendly reminder, it doesn't have to be a question about today's webinar either. It could be any of your 365 questions. We're happy to help. All right, everyone. Well, if you do have questions and you need to reach out to us, feel free to do so afterwards via email or give us a buzz. But until next time, it was a pleasure learning with you guys. Thank you so much. It was always a joy. Thank you.